live from Amsterdam and Brussels. It is ZN Live.
Live.
Very good. I'm here today with my good friend Doron. He's a conversational AI strategist, a business owner, and host of the weekly podcast. I love the name Botcasters, that covers conversational AI, chatbots, and tests a chatbot each week. Doron hates chatbots that don't answer your questions. And my first question is, why is that such a thing?
Because you chase away your customers. Anytime you come on a website or in WhatsApp and you converse with a chatbot and it doesn't understand you or doesn't answer your question, first thing you'll try to do is call these people, even if it's not necessary. So you chase away your customers, and a lot of companies are very hard to reach by phone. So basically, it's a customer lost.
No, but what I mean is, why is it so difficult for chatbots to understand what I want? I ask a question and they never understand what I want.
But that's the other part. That's the technical part. The way they design the chatbot, the way they construct it. That means the technical part behind it. And they use intents and utterances, very complex. Basically, they try to figure out what you're going to ask and then assign an answer to it. But if it didn't think about what you were going to ask, then you don't have an answer. It works with keywords. It looks very complex. It's not that complex, but it's the amount of work you put into it. And now there's this thing, large language models they put behind chatbots. Of course, we heard about this. And that is a good thing, but also a bad thing. But I think we'll talk about that a little bit later in the show.
Yeah, so you've been working on chatbots for a really long time. And now, of course, we have OpenAI, we have ChatGPT. How has that changed things for you? Has it made your life easier? And why have you always been so fascinated about these topics?
Well, to start off, I was handed a couple of years ago. I was handed a complex problem in a company I worked for, and we used chatbots to solve that problem. But chatbots in a different way. We changed the paradigm. Everybody sees chatbots. Usually, people see a chatbot on a website. You go there. Nobody knows in advance what you're going to ask that bot. We thought we needed contact with the customer, a conversation. So we thought we'd change the paradigm, turn it around, and ask the customer, invite him to talk to our chatbot, which means we had control over the conversation, and that meant it was predictable, and we could get the outcome we want and happy customers. So we did that for an insurance company serving a lot of customers, but the business case was beyond everything we could ever imagine, much, much better than we thought in advance. So yeah, that started me off on chatbots. And first we started off doing it fully structured. So we built a chatbot basically with 21 million variations of possible combinations of outcomes, which is for a human mind, for an advisor, impossible to do. So that was great, but we learned the basic thing, and then I thought, I can do this for other companies as well. So we started a company with a couple other people, strategizing chatbots and implementing chatbots for other companies. And now you see AI getting in there, but it's still quite unpredictable. You have to be really, really careful with what you put out there, because it also, ChatGPT also dreams stuff. And other models do that as well. So that's if you want to bring out the voice of your brand, you have to be really, really careful how to use AI in your chatbot. It's not that easy as it seems. Although every company is screaming and shouting for it. Oh, we need ChatGPT right now. It solves all our problems. It doesn't.
Yeah, but it will get there soon enough, don't you think?
Yes, it will get there. I think companies should embrace it and start working with it, experimenting with it. However, be very, very, very careful what you put in there, because and how you manage it, because the output could be a total disaster communicating with your customers. So you need some controls and some curation on it. So that's what you see happening actually right now, that there are smaller models specifically trained on the company data, so there's no escape as to what it can answer. Now the question, what is a large language model, right?
Well, tell me more about the LLMs that I keep hearing about.
Well, ChatGPT is a large language model. Everybody knows ChatGPT. However, it's part of generative AI. Basically, it's all artificial intelligence, and it can generate something. And a large language model is basically trained on a huge amount of text. It's scraped off the internet. That's also actually a point, an advice for communicators. If you build a website and you don't want your text to be scraped and used by LLMs, if we're talking about copyright, for instance, you need a robots.txt file on your website saying you don't want that. If you put it out there, they cannot scrape your website. Just a tip. But the thing is, you have generative AI, and a large language model is a generative AI model, but it only generates text. And the other models, generative AI models like DALL-E or whatever, they can generate images or music, or it's broader. So an LLM is an example of a generative AI model. And basically, based on text, it can generate new text or combined text that sounds like a human, because it's trained by text made by a human.
So tell me about your podcast, Botcasters. Love the name.
Well, that's an interesting story. When we started our company, I was looking for independent information, as is not being sponsored by any technical company. And I figured out that all podcasts around were sponsored by a technical platform, which meant the information I would get wasn't objective. So then my oldest son, who produces podcasts amongst other things, he said, "Why don't you start your own podcast?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's a lot of work and every week a commitment." Next day he came along and he gave me a shopping list, basically all the equipment I had to order. So I ordered the equipment. 2 days later I had the equipment, and when it's standing there, you sort of feel obliged to start. And that was actually almost 35 editions ago, and a couple of events. And it turned out to be a lot of fun to do. I had no experience in the field, but you learn so much, and you get all these people that have a good story to tell, or actually knowledge to share. That's what we're all about. And what you get then is that people are listening and picking up stuff. And I went to an event not so long ago. People come up to me and say, "Oh, you're Doron from Podcast." I'm like, "Who are you?" And they're like, "We saw you on your podcast." I never realized that would happen. Never imagined. But that's how it started, and it's a success. So we're going to record number 35 one of these days.
35. And so what's your main goal? Whom are you trying to reach?
The conversational AI community, or that's the people who are making chatbots, because we test a chatbot every week in the podcast. And that's why we started off with that I hate chatbots that don't understand you, because it's absolutely not necessary. But a lot of the times it's either the technology they chose to work with, or the amount of work they put in, or the amount of maintenance they put on the chatbot as it develops. But the purpose is to inform, instruct, and share knowledge to the conversational AI community on one hand, but also the users, so the companies that have chatbots, to inspire them to do better. To start with it.
What is worse, no chatbot or a chatbot that doesn't understand you?
I'm afraid to say a chatbot that doesn't understand you.
Yeah.
But and there's too many around, unfortunately. But that's good.
What's the worst one that you've tested?
Sorry?
What's the worst one that you've tested?
I think in terms Virgin Atlantic. It wasn't the worst one in the sense that the way it worked, but they so totally missed the voice of the brand. It's like you go to Virgin Atlantic and you assume a great brand experience because of the name and the image of the brand, and they totally missed the mark. And I tried to contact Richard Branson and his team, and they never responded. Of course, I understand, because it's annoying. But that's a missed opportunity. They could do great stuff. And we tested other bots where you saw like GDPR problems, and recently the last one we tested a chatbot or an application where it's called Chat PDF. You could ask a PDF any question. So we uploaded a book, or actually the first 100 pages of a book. And then during the course of the testing, we asked the bot if it could tell us the ending of the book, which it shouldn't have been able to tell us because it wasn't in there. And it basically told us the correct ending of the book. The only way they could figure that out was going to their database or online to figure that out. And it wasn't supposed to do that. So we tested more of that. And we figured out it was connected to the internet, which basically you can't trust the application to do what it promised to do. So we end up very often breaking a bot, not with the intention of breaking one, but to make it better. And we test it with the eyes of a consumer. So,
but back to Virgin, what was so bad about the tone of voice? Like, how did it sound?
Actually, you hit the nail on you hit the nail with the hammer.
The nail on the head.
the nail on the head. Yeah, two Dutchies talking English. Well, if you talk about the voice of the brand, Virgin Atlantic has like this great image of great customer service, having a great experience, and being adventurous. When you come into a chatbot, it's boring, it's not friendly, it's not a good experience, it doesn't know what you're asking, etc., etc. I can go on, make a long list. I would suggest watch the episode, but it became annoying. And when it becomes annoying, then you create a distance between me and the brand. And the last thing you want to do is create a distance. You want to get me closer.
It's so interesting because I've never thought as chatbots as a continuation of the brand, but you're 100% right. It should be. It is just as much a part of the brand as anything else that we develop for our clients. And definitely in terms of tone of voice, it is definitely a voice. So a good brand experience continues in a, it's a person. It should be a person. And with ChatGPT, we see that it can adopt a tone of voice. So that's so interesting. But it never has been the case when you talk to a chatbot that you feel like, oh yeah, I'm talking to a real person. As you say, they almost never really understand what you're saying. You're asking a question, they give you the wrong answer. So the basic understanding isn't there, let alone a proper brand representative saying the right things in the right tone of voice. I mean, that's several bridges too far as per the current understanding. But you're saying no, I'm expecting more than that. And I'm wondering if you would approach not maybe the highest boss of a company, but someone a little more approachable, if they would not take that a little bit more serious. If you would tag them on Twitter, or because I do think it's something very interesting.
We do tag these people, and we get private messages. They do respond, but not. And I can understand perfectly. Our purpose is not to destroy them or something. Our purpose is to make them understand, from our consumer point of view, that this chatbot isn't as helpful as it could be. And some are really helpful and really good, and we say that also. But some are just dramatic.
What is an example of a really good one that you've tested?
Amtrak USA was really good. Because see, the interesting thing is a lot of companies think they need to do a lot of chit chat in the chatbot, but if you go to a website with a purpose and you want to get something done, you don't want to be annoyed with this chit chat around it. Get my stuff done, and then if I have time left and I want to, we can do chit chat. But first, do the business you want to do, and that's one of the problems. It's like with design. A lot of companies design with a lot of grandeur, but sometimes you have to keep it small and concise. And that's the same with a chatbot. A great conversation is small and concise. If I can get you to your endpoint in 2 steps instead of 5, you'd rather do the 2-step version than the 5-step version. And that's part of the problem. And part of the problem is the underlying technology. So people make a choice and then they start designing, but you should first design a use case or use cases and strategize that. That's what I do. And then you decide what technology fits the profile. And a lot of times companies choose because they have a certain tech stack. The tech people choose a tech stack for the chatbot, and then the people who make the chatbot have to work with it. But it doesn't work because it doesn't serve the business. And that's another thing which I'm not frustrated, but I see a huge opportunity is, as I said before, from contact to contract. I put that in the ideas to talk about, because one of the things you see, you have a conversation on a website, you give information about what you want, right? You ask for how much is mortgage advice in your company, what does it cost, how does it work? I give you a commercial signal, right? And almost none of the chatbots pull you in to do the transaction. And that could be a commercial transaction or an administrative transaction, like changing your address. Why would I call someone? Or even nowadays, how many extranets do you have to use, or my environments of companies you work with as a private person to change your address? How many? It's too much, right? Why can't I do that in a chatbot? Why can't I go to WhatsApp and, although you can discuss if WhatsApp is safe, but for the sake of the argument, why can't I go to WhatsApp, just tell them what my new address is?
Yeah, it's a very good point. By the way, I want to say hi to Jenny from Association World. Thank you for watching. And also Justin, who says he was finally able to load Zenon Live on his 12-year-old laptop. Hello, Doron, he says. Okay. Hi, Justin, as well. I wanted to ask you, how expensive is it to design a good chatbot to take care of? Because of course, there's also a cost in getting customer service representatives, or in the Brussels environment, people to take care of all sorts of operational tasks. How expensive is it to develop a good chatbot for your organization?
Well, first, let's go one step back, because it's very, without a use case, it's very hard to say how much it costs, or how expensive or how cheap it is. More interesting is not to talk about the cost, but about the revenue, because the business case eventually is more relevant than the cost. And when you start off with a chatbot, it costs money to make, to test, and I would advise anyone who starts with a test, and start really small, and then basically you grow the cost as you grow the chatbot, but then it has more functionality, it has more business value, and that part of the problem is that a lot of companies want to start so big, it needs to do everything, then it becomes a couple hundred thousand euros, gigantic, and they fail. Why? Because they want to put too many use cases without any experience in there. It doesn't work, because you can't put in a chatbot on your company, on your website, or in your processes without changing your organization. It's like a tango. It has to go together. And if you do one, the organization doesn't accept it, it doesn't work. So you can imagine you go to a chatbot and it doesn't understand you, and it wants to connect you to a customer service agent. That would be the good way. So, okay, first time, I don't understand you, but let me connect you to someone who does. And that would be acceptable, right?
Yeah.
But what if the chatbot people do not work together with the customer service people? So there's no one available. And here you are, waiting in line. You end up being frustrated, customer lost. Same story. So there needs to be a balance. So if you talk about cost, you can start off really small with low cost and experiment with relatively cheap tools to figure out what works for you. But eventually you have to go to a corporate grade material, as I would say, or technology, in order to have it safe and sound and integrate with Salesforce or other technologies, or Azure, to keep it grounded in your organization and integrating in your IT infrastructure. Because if you want to make a chatbot personal, you need to integrate it in your IT infrastructure and keep data safe.
So, do you have some tips for communicators or young communicators who are looking at conversational AI?
Yes. Well, look at how conversations are made in books. Because interestingly enough, one of my guests in the podcast was the CEO and founder of the Conversation Design Institute. If you ever do a course, go there. But he is a failed book writer, and he's honest about it. He says the reason I understand conversations because I was really good at writing conversation for the book. The book failed, but the part about the conversation stuck, and that's it. If you're able to communicate, have a good conversation with someone, you should be able to translate that to a chatbot and then make it shorter, because it's not the same as talking to someone. Shorter and functional. And the tip would be, try to put yourself in the position of the user of the chatbot, and figure out how many steps he would get to his end goal. And if it's too many, they're not going to stay. They're going to get frustrated. And if there's any, and understand where the point of failure is, where, okay, here's where the bot doesn't understand the customer. We have it can only happen once, and then we connect to a customer service agent. And now what a lot of companies do, they forget that when there's no opening hours, what do? They forget to ask for a telephone number or an email address. So the customer is still lost. And when do people go on the chatbot? When there's no opening hours. Interestingly enough, so the tip would be, check out the logic of your company, and look at it through the glasses of the eyes of I say glasses because I wear glasses, of course, but through the eyes of the consumer. And it's really different than from the perspective of the company itself.
Yeah, this is really resonating with Justin, who is almost upset about it. He says this is a common problem he has in the Philippines with customer service systems. They keep relying on chatbots, but internal human support is clearly lacking. And I think, Justin, this is not just the case in the Philippines.
Justin, it's interesting that Justin should say that, because one of the things I'm an advocate of is that a chatbot is actually a digital coworker. It's a colleague. It should be integrated in the team. That's why I said you need a balance internally and with the chatbot. If you don't have that, you're going to miss the mark. And that's exactly what he says. No balance, you miss the customer.
100%. Let's go to the recommendations. Tell me, Doron, what are you recommending to us?
I have 3 recommendations, and they're not new. The first one is the book The Goal by Professor Eliyahu Goldratt, and it's about the theory of constraint. And I would advise anybody to read it. It's a way to approach problems and actually solve them in a not so common way, but actually your life becomes a lot easier. Your business life, but also your private life, is the way you perceive problems. And if you like to puzzle and solve problems, this book is excellent. And if you've read the first, you want to read the sequels. The second one is the book Hooked by Nir Eyal. And actually, if you want to build a chatbot, also with he based himself a little bit on Cialdini, as you probably would know as well. It's a way to in an ethical way to keep people hooked to whatever you're doing. And if you build a chatbot, one of the things you want to do is have the customer come back to that point of service, right? So you want to get them hooked on that service, so the cost goes down, but the customer experience, if you do it well, goes up. So, and the last one is the movie Apollo 13 with Tom Hanks. And there's this one line in it, where they're up in space and they try to figure out how to save the Apollo 13 that is in space. And then the guy who's in control says, failure is not an option. And that's one of the things, if you do a project, especially in chatbots, you will run into a lot of hardships and problems and failures. But every failure is a learning, especially in chatbot building. So I would advise, watch the movie. It's very inspirational. It's also about problem solving, and it helps.
I worked for a company in my 20s, and we had a CEO, and he always said, failure is not an option. And then communication said, well, that's not such a good slogan for internal motivation. And so he changed it to success is the only option. And none of it worked very well. So I'm very happy to be working at ZN, where it's constantly about improving, testing, and an agile business, which I think is a much healthier mindset. And my recommendation for today is The Founder's Mentality by Chris Zook and James Allen. And there are 3 main points in that. First one is insurgency, which is all about the mindset, thinking like a founder. Doesn't matter where you are in the business. You can be super junior in your organization, in your association, but thinking about, feeling responsible for its success, which I believe is the best way to progress in your organization, feeling responsible for it, constantly challenging as well the status quo, and embracing a mindset of constant innovation and improvement. That is also the second point in the book, which is the owner's mindset, sense of accountability, responsibility, and resourcefulness in each person in the organization. And when you feel like you own the company, and of course you shouldn't think that you really do, but if you feel like the company is truly yours, you're going to behave differently. You're not just like, okay, 9 to 5 kind of mentality, but truly feeling responsible for success. It changes everything that you do. You make better decisions, come up with better solutions for problems. It really changes things. You try it for a week and you will see the difference. And an obsession with the front line, meaning that you constantly think about, if you are in an agency, for example, the clients, what do they need? What needs to be improved? Constantly asking them, do what we offer still meet your needs, meets your needs? And yeah, if you do those 3 things, you are in continuous growth. The founder's mentality. I recommend it strongly. On that note, Doron, thank you so much for joining me here today. Phil is traveling and is off today, but he says hi to you as well. And I wish everyone a fantastic weekend, you especially, Doron, and thank you to the support team. Have a great weekend.
Thank you for having me.
Bye, guys.